Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We start off our second round with Mr. Faisal Mustafa. Many people believe that the president is taking a reactive approach and not a proactive one compared to the former president. He is the head of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Who is controlling the cabinet? The Prime Minister or the President? Who is controlling the country? The President or the Prime Minister? The 3 minutes starts now.
Shami, the President appoints the Prime Minister. In fact, the majority of the cabinet ministers are members from the United National Party. So, the Sri Lankan Freedom Party ministers are a minority. And unlike under the previous regime, ministers are actual ministers. So the ministers are being given a free hand on how they carry out affairs. So even though President Maithripala Sirisena is the president, de facto one could argue that it's a UNP government, because each minister has his own policy, how he carries on affairs. So in the fact that President Maithripala Sirisena gave a pledge to the people that he would appoint Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister, and he has given his ministers actual power, one could perceive, it could be perceived that it is a UNP government, and in fact it could be. So it would be wrong to blame President Maithripala Sirisena on how the government is run, because it's a collective. The President is the head of the cabinet, but the government consists of the President and the cabinet of ministers. So constitutional otherwise, each minister carries out his functions in terms of the powers vested with him. So one would say that the president is not having, he's not taking control of things. But when majority of the ministers are UNP, I mean, it's difficult for him for the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. Question is, he's the president. He represents, he's the head of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. Sri Lankan Freedom Party do not have many members who are members of cabinet, and the major ministries are with UNP ministers. So therefore, in this environment, it is the UNP. It's more or less a UNP government in place because of the pledge given by President Maithripala Sirisena. We hope with the next election, we would have a government where the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is a majority. So answering your question, it is not a question of blaming President. You can't blame President Maithripala Sirisena because he came into power with the support of the United National Party. So he has to give them their due place and their due recognition. So therefore, in conclusion, what I would like to say is, it is a UNP government, UNP administration in play, but with President Maithripala Sirisena as the head. So it's a very difficult situation. I don't think any other president would have faced this situation, where the policies and principles of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party, the policies and principles of the United National Party, thinking of the Prime Minister, thinking of the President, thinking of the... So it's a mix. So answering your question, President Maithripala Sirisena is in control, but as the majority of the ministers are from the United National Party, the United National Party in carrying out the day-to-day affairs of the government is playing a major role. So one could perceive, it could be perceived that it's a United National Party government.
Mr. Mustafa, I just want to pose another question to you. You said the ministers currently are actual ministers. They have a free hand to carry out their duties. Am I right?
Yes.
However, you stepped down as a Minister of State.
I did.
Were you not allowed to carry out your duties?
No, when I was appointed the state minister, and there was no minister above me. When there was a minister appointed above me, I felt it would be a waste of public funds if I continue. Not that I have no issue with Honorable Arjuna Ranatunga. I had no problems with him, but it was a policy decision because I did not support President Maithripala Sirisena in expectation of anything. I did not negotiate that I want this portfolio, that portfolio. I just supported him on principle. Firstly, because of the BBS. That was a major issue for me. I very clearly told President Mahinda Rajapaksa 1 month back, if the BBS continues to support you, there are issues for my community, I wouldn't be able to be a part of your government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mustafa. Coming to Deputy Minister Watan Seranayake, you said More has to be done. The 100-day program is ridiculous. That was something that was put on by the present regime itself. You think you made the right choice when you supported President Maithripala Sirisena, or you wished you were in the other side of the camp?
No, I'm very happy that I supported President Sirisena for the simple reason this country needed the required changes. It needed the changes of the arbitrary powers of the President, leaving the President and going to Parliament and to the people in general. It required certain other changes as well. It required a new political culture. It required a situation where there was more transparency in the country. So all this I think we achieved, and I'm happy about that. I'm also hopeful that we will go for proper electoral reforms, because this system of what is known as manapas or preferences is, I think, ridiculous, and it is the ruin of democracy in this country and unity within parties as well. So I think we need to change the electoral system as well, and I hope we can do that with the 20th Amendment. I do think there are still more things to do in the country. I think there are still anomalies in the constitution which we haven't ironed out. For instance, the fact that two candidates can contest a presidency, and one can take, if the incumbent president wins, he can take oaths on a different date several months ahead, even though it has been reduced. Now in the old system, if a president could after 4 years call an election, and the presidential term is 6 years, he can take oaths after those 2 years are over. So he can take the full 6 years, whereas his opponent, if he wins, does not get that benefit. He has to take oaths immediately, sort of, and start off, whereas the incumbent president gets 2 years. At the present juncture, because the term limits have been brought to 5, he still gets a benefit, but a smaller benefit. So I think there are anomalies like that also which you need to iron out.
Do you have a free hand to carry out your duties, because
yes,
you are the Deputy Minister of the present regime?
Yes, and as you can see if you watch television, I'm doing that.
What has your ministry done so far?
Right.
After assuming duties, you are the Deputy Minister.
Right.
You hold portfolio sports and tourism.
Yeah.
What have you done?
Under tourism, we have I have particularly taken control of the wildlife part of it. I have one of the main problems, as I was faced with when I took the position, was the huge racket in stealing baby elephants from the jungles and rearing them as domestic elephants. So this racket had to be curbed and stopped, and I think I've done a good job in doing that. It has entirely ceased now. The market for stolen elephants from the jungle have stopped. Now this is the main thing that I focused on, but also there have been other measures in the fields of sports and tourism that we have progressed in. But I want to emphasize that there was a huge problem with elephant stealing, and that has, I think, been curbed.
Has your ministry been able to eliminate the corruption in the sporting ministry?
Well, if you observed, you would have seen Navin Dissanayake giving a dossier on all the corruption that has happened within the ministry. So, and I think in our time, I don't think we resort to any suspect practices. I think we all try to adhere to the law of the country, and I think we try to see that corruption under our government, under us at least, doesn't exist.
There's a question on our Facebook page. It says, things are moving slow, Deputy Minister. What is the reason behind this? Is things moving slow?
Slow and steady wins the race.
Slow and steady wins the race. I open the questions to our journalists. Sonali, we'll start with you now.
Right. Now, Deputy Minister, at the 2010 general elections, you were elected from the Gampaha district as a UPFA MP.
That's right.
After Mr. Maithripala Sirisena announced that he was contesting as a common candidate, you crossed over. You are now district leader for Polonnaruwa.
No, let me correct you. I crossed over first, he crossed over afterwards.
That's right. That's right. You are now district leader for Polonnaruwa.
Yes.
For the UNP.
That's right, which is an entirely new constituency for you. How do you expect the voters in Polonnaruwa to have confidence in you, given the fact that you have in the past several times changed your allegiances? And also given the fact that your original district is Gampaha.
Okay. Several times in the past changed your allegiances?
In 2004, you joined DSLFP.
That was the first time I joined a political party.
Sonal, you need to rephrase your question. I think you're making our guests uncomfortable with
No, no, I'm
facts.
not at all uncomfortable.
I think
I'm not at
let's
all
start off. I think the question is that you want to pose is, from Gampaha, now Polonnaruwa, can you serve the people in Polonnaruwa within a short span of time? You have up until hopefully September.
Okay.
That is what the president said. A new
I have worked with the
Parliament will
Polonnaruwa
come
district
to
for
be.
years and years and years. My uncle was the MP there. He was a minister who was in Parliament. He has represented that constituency for years. I used to do all his work in Polonnaruwa district, so I'm quite familiar with the district. The district didn't exist before my great-grandfather DS and I could clear the jungle and put people from all over the country there and started that district. So I'm quite familiar with the district. I know the district, and I expect the people in Polonnaruwa, I know they're intelligent people, to vote for me. I don't see anything strange about that, and I do go back to the point that I haven't continuously changed my allegiances. I've always acted according to my conscience, because I think that's what my religion teaches me. Act according to your conscience. And therefore that means even taking the first step against a government which is very popular. Rajapaksa was a very popular figure. He still is. And I took the first step against that government because that my conscience dictated to me that this country needed a change. If my conscience dictates to me in the future that I have to step against another government, which maybe even this government, I will always do that. I will always put my conscience before any allegiance to anyone or anything.
Deputy Minister Vasantha Senanayake, you're talking about how under this regime, specifically in the area of sports, there has been no sort of interference. But we found out today, I think, that the Asian Olympic Committee's president has said that the Asian Youth Games will not be held in Sri Lanka in 2017 as a result of interference by the government in the National Olympic Committee. So, what do you have to say in response to that? Is there interference in the National Olympic Committee on the part of the government or the Ministry of Sports?
Well, as far as I'm aware, there is no interference.
None at all.
No.
So what would warrant the Asian Olympic Committee now as the latest incident, and also the ICC previously, to say that there is government?
I think what the minister intended to do was to try to set up a impartial committee, and in doing so I think he to some extent incurred the wrath of the Olympic Committee. I think the minister did that in all good intention and with a view to actually bringing about neutrality, because I think it was high on the minister's list to try to maintain as little political interference in the field of and sphere of politics. But in doing so, I think he antagonized a certain group of people. What the minister will do in response to this, I don't know. Can I call it a threat? I don't know. I don't know. But I'm quite aware that the minister's intentions were quite honorable.
Deputy Minister Faisal Mustafa, when we were going during the break, we were talking about electoral reforms.
Parliamentarian, Nadia.
I'm no more minister. Sorry, no more minister. But MP Faisal Mustafa, we were talking about electoral reforms, and you were specifically talking about minority representation. I raise that point to you again. Don't you think that Sri Lanka as a country needs to move beyond this thought of minority representation and talk about representation for Sri Lankans as a people? And also, this is a question to both of you actually, where do you stand on this proposal that the number of MPs, the number of seats in Parliament should be increased to 255?
Shall I answer your first question?
Yeah.
Sri Lanka went through a war for 30 years. During that 30 years, were we secular or were we racist? If you look at the websites, say, before President Maithripala Sirisena took over, you know how minorities were attacked. You know how mosques were attacked. Because I was there during the Aludgama incident. I was there during the Grand Pass incident. So people have moved away from being secular because of the war. People, their mindset were compartmentalized. So it's easy to talk about being secular and all that, but we have to know the ground situation.
I mean, I won the I was elected from the Kandy district. I got 65% single Buddhist votes, but that's a rare exception. But if you take minority politicians in parliament, 95% of their vote are from their race or ethnicity. So we have to change. We have to think as Sri Lankans. It has to start from the bottom and from the top as well. If you take the US, there is a colored president. Do you think Sri Lanka will have a colored president or a minority president or a minority prime minister or a minority ceremonial president or prime minister? We won't. We know the incident with regard to Lakshman Kadirgam. He was going to be appointed the prime minister. You know the opposition with regard to that. So I think the war is over and we have a president who has been elected by all races and ethnicities. President Maitripala Sirisena is the symbol of unity because he won on a very secular mandate. We had the JVP, we had the JHU, we had the TNA, we had the Muslim Congress. It's diverse. So I think now Sri Lanka is geared for that. But when it comes to electoral reforms, it's very unlikely, supposing there is an electorate where there is a particular ethnicity. It's very unlikely if somebody contests as a minority ethnicity in that electorate, the chances of him winning is very remote. So until that mindset is changed, we need to have minority representation. That PR system helped with regard to minority representation.
So basically your position is that there needs to be some concern towards minority representation.
And not only minority representation, you take parties like the JVP or the JH, where they're thinking, the ideology. It's not only ethnicity. Say the JVP is a very progressive party. They've achieved a lot with regard to good governance, with regard to corruption, and even with regard to President Maitripala Sirisena being elected. I think people listen to the member of parliament, Andrakumara Dissanayake, than most others. So we need them in parliament, and the PR system had helped. But in the meantime, today there is no member who is responsible for a particular electorate. So we need a mixture of both. But to get consensus is very difficult because the minorities are very, very concerned that they will lose their base. Parties like the JVP, they are worried that they lose their base, and their ideology is also required in parliament. The parliament is a mix of various diverse views.
Deputy Minister Vasantha Sena, where do you stand on this issue?
I'm sorry, on what?
Where do you stand on this matter of there being
the number
minority
of
representation and particularly increasing the number of seats to 255?
I'm not in favor of the seats being increased to anything more than what exists currently. However, I am fully for a system where you have the first past the post system along with a proportional system, but the proportional system ought to be of national proportion, I think. If you have a proportional system which is district-wise, it is okay for certain minority parties, and I don't only mean the Muslim and Tamil minority communities, I mean minority parties in general, which also includes so many other little parties. It is fair for some, but it isn't fair for others. Like for instance, the TNA, which has a block vote in a certain district, will do okay under the district proportional basis, but the Muslims, which are scattered all over the country, will not do as well. So what is fair is to have national a national proportional system where parties get so many members in according to the national poll that party gets. Along with that, if you go for a first past the post system, I think it is fair for everybody, and I think it is a just situation, because the first past the post has also in history created very unfair results where both Mrs. Bandaranaike's defeat and Dudley Sennaike's defeat, where the SLFP and the UNP both went to 7 or 8 seats, were times where nationally they had got about 35 or 40% of the vote, which is ridiculous. You get only 8 seats in parliament, you have 40% of the vote is silly. So the first past the post alone can sometimes produce very unfair results. So that is why you require a mixture of the two. But I think what really needs to be eliminated in this whole process is the system of preferences which causes so much enmity and hatred within your own party, and has been the result of much violence throughout election history. So I think that is what we ought to be seeking to eliminate or to reduce at least.
Mr. Mustafa, you have been currently working with the President Maithripala Sirisena, very closely on many issues. Have you been able to raise the issue with regard to minority concerns in an electoral platform? Have you been able to speak to him?
Yeah, I mean, he's very concerned. That's why you would have seen that he has had a dialogue with all minority parties, and he continuously believes that there has to be a fair representation. He is not in a hurry with regard to the 20. It needs a broader consensus. That alone, I mean, I've had a dialogue with him. He believes, I mean, he's a president who continuously believes in a dialogue. Even with regard to the 19th Amendment, I don't think anybody believed that it would be passed. And I don't think anybody believed that he could get consensus of all parties concerned. So I think with regard to minority representation and minority issues, he has great concern. And also, if you look at the election of President Maithripala Sirisena, it is a fact that the minorities played a great role. So I mean, if a president has been elected by all parties, and it was SLFP versus the rest, so everybody was a part of his victory. Even people like us who left the SLFP, and I think would have brought in about 5% or more of the SLFP votes towards President Maithripala Sirisena's victory, because Maithripala Sirisena was given nomination as the presidential candidate because the United National Party knew that if they put a candidate, they would have lost. Other parties knew that if they put a candidate, they would have lost. The consensus was reached because President Maithripala Sirisena was the only candidate who could have defeated President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
The United People's Freedom Alliance currently has a majority in the parliament, led by the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, of course. Come elections, hopefully in June, July, September, because the President said before September there will be a parliament. Will the Sri Lanka Freedom Party contest alone, or will they contest as an alliance?
His Excellency President Maithripala Sirisena is open that all UPFA constituent partners could come and contest with us. It's unfortunate that certain quarters are hoping that there will be a split in the SLFP. I know certain parties believe that the only hope in them capturing power is if the Sri Lankan Freedom Party is split. It's very unfortunate that you have to depend on a party being split to come into power. But we will do everything possible to see that the Sri Lankan Freedom Party is not split. Because if we are not split, which I believe we will not be split, we will definitely get the majority in parliament.
Are these quarters within the UPFA itself?
No, not within the UPFA. Obviously, any other parties who are hopeful that they could capture power. Now you take for example the United National Party. Continuously you get statements issued that the SLFP is divided. I mean, that's politics. I mean, it will be easy for the United National Party to capture power if the Sri Lankan Freedom Party is split. And they are hopeful that it would be. But as a member of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party, we work tirelessly to see that we could keep the party together. There can be diverse views, diverse opinions, there could be disagreements. But every single member of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party, I know His Excellency the President Maithripala Sirisena, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, Madam Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumara, they all love the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. And they have been elected as the President due to the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. President Maithripala Sirisena, when he contested as the General Secretary of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. He didn't contest as a member of the United National Party. He got the support of the United National Party. He got the support of the TNA. He got the support of the JVP. So he has the Sri Lankan Freedom Party interest at heart.
Mr. Mustafa said that the SLFP can win a majority in parliament. So UNP is going to lose the elections.
If SLFP gets a majority, the UNP can't get the majority.
What are your thoughts on this? Do you think the UNP does not have a competitive advantage now, or what's going to happen in the future?
Well, I think the UNP definitely has an advantage. However, what Mr. Mustafa said is you don't need rocket science to figure out that if the SLFP is split, it is advantageous to the UNP. And I think as UNP, I think we will hope that the SLFP is split. But nevertheless, whether the SLFP is split or not, We must develop our own independent strategy, and I think we have done that, to win whether they are split or not split. But yes, if they are split, it's all the better for us. Life is easier.
If they're not split, what would happen to the UNP?
I think the UNP will still do very well.
Sonali.
Mr. Mustafa, earlier on you mentioned that there were certain extremist elements which motivated you to joining President Maithripala Sirisena. This is a very sensitive issue, and at the present juncture, what measures are you taking to ensure that these kinds of situations do not take place again?
But today law and order is prevailing, and there are no situations of that nature. I don't, even as journalists, you all must be sensing a new freedom. I mean, even with regard to religious tolerance, if law and order is enforced strictly,
Do you have
nothing would happen.
ministers' sons going and bashing up nightclubs anymore?
No, I mean, we have to look at it this way. There's a new sense of freedom. We have, the judiciary is independent. I mean, as journalists, I'm sure you all must be feeling a sense of freedom. You all were subject to several incidents. I think this studio, right, was subject to attack.
The one in
Bepani.
Pandipitiya.
The Pandipitiya. So, I mean, I don't think that kind of occurrence during broad daylight. Was it during broad daylight?
No, it was in the night.
In the night, but such incidents, I'm sure, and yet the culprits have not been brought to book. So, I mean, we have to look at it from that point of view. There are shortcomings, but with regard to religious tolerance, I think this government is emphasizing on that. More than the government, President Maithripala Sirisena will not tolerate. I mean, you get earlier, state media was used to bash the minority communities. They were given a platform. In fact, I appeal to the government, don't give the state media to broadcast hate speeches. If the state media permits such acts, how can one depend from, what can you depend, nobody can expect anything from the state. But I think that era is no more. If you look at TV now, you don't get bashing of minorities. If you go to the website, you may yet get some, but it's a relatively reduced, because if there is no tacit acceptance, even if the state is not directly involved, but if there's tacit acceptance, these occurrences will continue. I mean, I saw what happened in Grand Pass. A mob attacked a mosque. The police was watching. Beruwala. I mean, I'm not saying one party was right. Now, if you take a simple example, after the Beruwala incident, the representative of the government in Geneva made a statement saying that some Muslim youth were the cause of this incident. I mean, you don't get a
But
government.
you were there in Aludgama, right
I was
after the
there.
incident took
I mean,
place. What
I mean, in Aludgama, whatever the incident was, it was a private dispute. But since law and order was not enforced, I mean, it resulted in ethnic disturbance. If you allow any party, Muslim, Sinhala or Tamil, to take the law into their own hands, and if you see the police watching, my vehicle was smashed. I was subjected to being attacked. Police was watching, and nobody was brought to the book. But I believe that's why people voted for this change, and now you don't see such an occurrence. And I'm very hopeful that with regard to hate speech and regard to any kind of disturbance with regard to one practicing his religion, law and order would be strictly enforced.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Vasant Saranayake, Parliamentarian Faisal Mustafa. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Our topics this evening. Where does the present government stand today? What can we expect? What will happen in the near future, the coming few days? Final round, we start off with Parliamentarian Faisal Mustafa. If you could turn back time, what would you change of this government?
Change back time of a 100-day government is a very difficult thing to do. I have not really been, I played a very passive role in this government. But this government has achieved a lot. I mean, expectations were too high. Shamil, I mean, if I'm going to answer this question, if I promise that I'll do so much in 100 days, I think what was envisaged was that they'll do it fast. But there was a countdown. So unfortunately, when you have a countdown, people's expectations are high. So I mean, what would I do to turn things around, or what would I do? What would I
What would you do differently?
It's a very tricky question which you asked, because if you go to see what has actually been done by this government, what have they achieved? There is more tolerance, there is independence of the judiciary, cost of living has come down to a certain extent. What I would have done is I would have got the projects which have been stalled to progress. I mean, eradicating corruption is one, but if you take at village level, there is a complaint that there is more to be done. The basic infrastructure facilities, but unfortunately, this government took a view that there is corruption. Corruption has to be probed first before progressing with the contracts or tenders which have been given. So a person in the village who had great expectation is waiting and watching until a probe is made and some finality with regard to that is achieved. But what I feel, what need to have been done differently was, without stalling those projects, bring the perpetrators to book, but allow the infrastructure projects which are going on to continue. Here, unfortunately, as there was allegation of mass-scale corruption, all development activity was halted for a very long time. This created a problem because circulation of money and other issues, and also people need to earn a living. So when you need to earn a living, the economy has to progress. But I can't blame this government as well, because in all these projects, according to the allegations made, that some of these tenders, that there are irregularities. So a government needs to take a decision, and this government took a decision. We have to probe into this. We'll have to retender this. Therefore, at village level, a villager would ask, I earlier was able to get things done faster, now things are not moving. I mean, this is one allegation which is made. So the government claims that it's been done for the greater good, but my view would have been that things should have progressed a little more faster, and then with regard to the common man, they would have been more satisfied.
Thank you very much, Mr. Faisal Mustafa, parliamentarian of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. I recollect just before your crossover, when you were questioned by a journalist, will you cross over? I remember your answer was, this was on News First, Suranga Srinaik interviewed you on Newsline, and you said, just before your crossover, and you said, I will act based on my conscience. And now when Sonali posed this question to you, you said, I will act based on my conscience. Are you really satisfied with this government?
I think I partially answered that question before, but I will do it again. What I said was that I am satisfied that this government has achieved significant milestones. Changing of the J.R. Jayawardena constitution was very significant, bringing about transparency, a new culture, all that. The independence of the judiciary. Am I fully satisfied? No, but will I ever be fully satisfied? I don't know.
What can we expect in the next few weeks as a government?
Well, I think we have to try to push the electoral reforms. And I hope, unlike the 19th Amendment, that with the 20th, they give everyone a hearing, that they listen to the voices of people who are particularly concerned about constitutional reform and who have something to contribute. And I hope they take everyone's views into account before formulating what they think is best for the nation. And I think it would be nice to see the 20th Amendment also being passed almost unanimously like the 19th was. I think that would be a good message to the country and the world, and another significant success for this government, which is somewhat like a national government. I don't know whether it can quite be described as national government, but it is something of a national government. So I think that would be a good step in the that would be a step in the right direction. I think I would like to see that.
What is the way forward for Sri Lanka?
The way forward is, I think, for people to stop insisting on elections and on basically personal political agendas, and just sit together and try to work out a national plan. I think this country needs national policies in lots of ministries. There should be a national policy on agriculture, national policy on tourism, national policy on lots of things. I think we should work on national policies, and for that I think we don't really need, although I think my party has been continuously asking for elections tomorrow, as it were. I don't think that matters. I think I don't mind if we go on till April, even till the legitimate time of Parliament actually comes to an end. So long as more nationally viable legislation and policies get carried through, I think that is what we need as a country, and that is what England did during the World War time. Although we cannot make an analogy between World War England and present Sri Lanka, and of course the parliamentarians in England, I think, came from a very similar background, which made it very easy for them to sit together and come to a consensus. Whereas here, I think we are so diverse. From one, we have apples and oranges and prunes and bananas and kiwis in this basket that we don't somehow come together on. It doesn't make the best fruit salad on most occasions. So I think one needs to be more country-minded rather than party-oriented.
Are you bullish about the country's future?
Let's say I'm optimistic. I don't know. I think we are living in interesting times, and I think we have everything going for us. I think we need to be a little less selfish and more interested in the country's interest.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Vasant Seranayake. Thank you very much, SLFP Parliamentarian Mr. Faisal Mustafa, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Nadim. Thank you very much, Sonali, for joining us this evening as well. Slow and steady wins the race. Are we steady enough? I'll leave it to the people to decide. Thank you very much for joining us right here on Face the Nation. Next week, same time, same place, 7:30 p.m. on MTV Sports. Thank you very much.